As we live in an extraordinary time of accelerated change, there's a massive challenge filled with unparalleled opportunities fused with uncertainty. ISOG's purpose has now, more than ever, been significant. This 2021, a stronger cyber defense strategy is required to manage the onslaught of cyber threats and intrusion. We are at the era of constant re-engineering.
Launch. Full virtual. Copy. Secure.
As the guardians of cyberspace, let us be engaged, established, equipped, empowered. This October 8 to November 8, and join us in the longest cybersecurity campaign of the country. The longest cybersecurity campaign of the country is back this 2021. The great shift for this era needs Herculean efforts to pivot to the new enterprise reality. Together, let's secure the new cyber norm. As we live in an extraordinary time of accelerated change, there's a massive challenge filled with unparalleled opportunities fused with uncertainty. ISOG's purpose has now, more than ever, been significant. This 2021, a stronger cyber defense strategy is required to manage the onslaught of cyber threats and intrusion. We are at the era of constant re-engineering.
Launch. Full virtual. Copy. Secure.
As the guardians of cyberspace, let us be engaged, established, equipped, empowered. This October 8 to November 8, and join us in the longest cybersecurity campaign of the country. The longest cybersecurity campaign of the country is back this 2021. The great shift for this era needs Herculean efforts to pivot to the new enterprise reality. Together, let's secure the new cyber norm.
Good morning. The program will begin in 5 minutes.
As we live in an extraordinary time of accelerated change, there's a massive challenge filled with unparalleled opportunities fused with uncertainty. ISOG's purpose has now, more than ever, been significant. This 2021, a stronger cyber defense strategy is required to manage the onslaught of cyber threats and intrusion. We are at the era of constant re-engineering.
Launch. Full virtual. Copy. Secure.
As the guardians of cyberspace, let us be engaged, established, equipped, empowered. This October 8 to November 8, and join us in the longest cybersecurity campaign of the country. The longest cybersecurity campaign of the country is back this 2021. The great shift for this era needs Herculean efforts to pivot to the new enterprise reality. Together, let's secure the new cyber norm.
Welcome to the special webinar series of ISOG I Am Secure 2021. Before we begin, let us honor the Philippine flag and sing the Philippine national anthem. To start our webinar, let me introduce you to our first speaker. He is the current and first ever appointed Director General of the Anti-Red Tape Authority, or ARTA, served as a founding and managing partner of his own law firm, the Bellica Aranas Balduesa de la Cruz and Associates, where he practices private law. He is the youngest consultant to the Office of the Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commission. Let us call on the Director General of ARTA, Attorney Jeremiah Bellica.
To the leaders and members of the Information Security Officers Group, to all the cybersecurity leaders, and to all the ladies and gentlemen in attendance today. Good morning. I hope everyone is well and safe. First, I'd like to thank you for inviting ARTA to participate in this National Cybersecurity Month activity. With your wonderful theme, The Great Shift, Securing the New Cyber Norm. We at ARTA are really committed to keeping the cybersecurity of all government agency in the cyberspace safe by implementing standards and compliance that will result in a stronger cyber defense strategy for the government as a whole in order to combat the onslaught of any possible attack or threats and intrusions in our privacy in our government transactions. If I may be allowed to share my slides, please. So the great shift, securing the new cyber norm, embedding security consciousness and compliance in the enterprise. Next slide, please. So the President issued a directive in his 2020 State of the Nation address to make all possible government services available online. This was also consistent with his goal of moving the country towards e-governance and assisting the country's response to this global pandemic. Next slide, please. Now, Republic Act 11032, or the Ease of Doing Business and Efficient Government Service Delivery Act of 2018, or as we call it, the new ARTA law, do mandate all government services to have an exact and shorter processing time. To efficiently process applications, all government agencies and offices are also required to process simple transactions within 3 working days, complex transactions within 7 working days, and highly technical applications within 20 working days. No? Or rather, 7 working days, again, 3 days, 7 days, or 20 days. And all of which would recon upon submission of complete documents and payment of the fees. The same law that prompted the creation of the Anti-Red Tape Authority, or ARTA, which is our agency. This is a government agency that was tasked with the administering and enforcing of the provisions of the Republic Act 11032. And also, we were tasked to monitor and ensure compliance with the national policy against red tape of our country. We are also championing the cause of ease of doing business in our country. So as you could see in the slide, these are just some of the salient features of the law. The creation of a service standard, or the Citizens Charter, the automatic approval provision, and also the violations that are being made punishable in the new law, or the strengthened ARTA law. Next slide, please. Now, ARTA has 2 distinct and complementing functions: the empowerment function and the enforcement function. For the empowerment function, we equip and capacitate the different government agencies through streamlining and reengineering. We also help government agencies come up with smarter solutions to streamline and also solve the problem of red tape and the silo system of operation across government offices within an agency or across government agencies within the bureaucracy. While at the same time, ARTA also has an enforcement function. Through this enforcement function, we can crack the whip if necessary of erring government officials by investigation and filing of cases. So, enforcement function means red tape was already committed, then ARTA can investigate and file cases against them, which we have been doing for this past 2 years. Next slide, please. So, in conformity with our empowerment functions, we have a number of issuances geared towards streamlining and reengineering. We have to understand that we cannot automate unless we first streamline and reengineer our processes. Many have thought of automation as a magic pill that would immediately resolve a lot of our problems. At a certain extent, that is true, but not entirely because without us understanding that we need to streamline before we can automate, then we run the risk of probably or possibly automating red tape since all of the unnecessary requirements and processes would be included in the online or electronic process. So we have to first streamline and re-engineer. And this is what ART has been doing. We've been conducting inspection of the compliances of the 17 NCR local government units with the ease of doing business earlier this year, specifically during the period of renewal of their business permits. We then also made recommendations to the different mayors on how they could improve their business one-stop shops or their electronic business one-stop shops, whichever case would apply to them. Also, Administrative Order number 23 was issued by the President to eliminate overregulation and to promote the efficiency and government processes. Whereas Administrative Order number 32, on the other hand, was issued to expedite the review and approval process of infrastructure flagship projects on water security. Now, there are several joint memorandum circulars that we have issued together with different government agencies in order to address, the long processes and queues being experienced across different government agencies. Two of these joint memorandum circulars that we pioneered together with the different government agencies are the JMC on the creation of a green lane for vaccine manufacturers and also the joint memorandum circular on the streamlining of the processing of uniform personal benefits. Ito po yung para sa ating mga police, armed forces, those belonging to the Coast Guard, what else? And also Bureau of Jail Management and Penology. So these uniform personnels, we were able to create a one-stop shop that would effectively streamline their benefit claims process. Also, we have conducted, very important, the regulatory impact assessment trainings to help solidify the regulatory management system in our country. Along with all of these, we have also released the Philippine Good Regulatory Principles or the Regulators Code, as well as the whole of government reengineering guidelines and manual to guide the entire government in its whole of government streamlining and reengineering. Next slide, please. Now, this now on the more action-packed function of ARTA. Should there be any violations from government personnel, there are really uh, steep penalties that are now being implemented or are already in place. We are really practicing our enforcement function and exercising it. ARTA has conducted 10 entrapment operations in just the past few months within this year, and has apprehended several fixers, and we were able to catch 13 fixers. And not only that, in the span of 2 years, we were able to file 532 cases as of September this year. So we expect that as we reach the end of the term of this administration, we might be able to hit the 1,000 mark that we have been setting. But of course, and the empowerment function or the streamlining function is really what would be a more lasting solution, because it is on the streamlining and automation of services that we would be able to find the biggest success in combating red tape and corruption. Next slide, please. Now, whenever we call on agencies to streamline and then eventually automate their services, we always remind them of two automation principles that is very important, especially in government. First, we always emphasize that automation is impossible without streamlining. As I've been mentioning, you cannot automate unless you streamline or you first fix your process. In my view, if you have a very good IT team or service provider, the easiest part in the end is just handing it to these experts to come up with an automated process. But the policies behind it, the rationale on maintaining or removing a certain requirement, that is the part that really normally gets bogged down by all of the bureaucratic processes or inefficiencies. So, by God's help and through the determination of our president and through the action of ARTA, we are now being able to address a lot of age-old problems when it comes to streamlining. But the second principle is, we believe that data sharing is that will make transactions easier, not only for government agencies processing applications and requests, but also for the general public. Data sharing would enable government agencies to break the silos that has been hampering simple information being shared to one government agency to another. The National Privacy Commission itself has been working closely with us to reorient the different government agencies and move them from a need to know to a need to share mindset. So we have to always explain and remind government agencies that as long as the data being required by another government agency from another government agency is in line with the organic function of that government agency requesting for that data, then there's really no data privacy law or prohibition being violated. So in our Memorandum Circular 2020-06 that ARTA issued, we also gave a clear provision on data sharing. Data sharing is a vital element for the whole of government approach, as it would also ensure to unhampered exchange of information across government agencies. This would also support the streamlining of the permitting and licensing processes, as it would also ensure that public information is always kept up to date and are really available and efficient for government service delivery. Imagine if TSA would be providing automatically all of the information that Pag-ibig, SSS, PhilHealth or the other social services agencies would be requiring, then it would be a whole lot easier for the Filipino people who have been transacting. And this is also one of the key ideas behind the national ID system. Now, also government agencies must also share information between and amongst themselves, but also in accordance with the Data Privacy Act or Republic Act 1017.3 or 10173. This is also consistent with the provisions of the IRR of the same law, the circular issued by the National Privacy Commission, NPC Circular 16-02, issued on 2016 of October. Next slide, please. Now we call this the hallmarks for automation of ARTA. Normally, there are two things that we would always remind a government agencies to ensure if they are now transitioning to an online platform. What used to be manual, they would now transition to online platform. We remind them that number one, data security. You need to protect your digital data. You have to issue policies, procedures, tools must also be implemented in order to ensure that cyber attack or data breach would not happen, or at least be limited. Of course, through the help of DICT in partnership with DICT with ARTA, this cyber security is being ensured. Next is on the data privacy. As I mentioned already, so long as the data being required by the government agency would be used in a function that is organic to the government agency, then there's really no problem in sharing of data. Otherwise, you have to seek for the person or the data owner's consent. Also having all of this data sharing agreement or DSIs. Next slide, please. Now, this slide only shows the several provisions in Republic Act 11032 or the new ARTA law that covers on automation. Section 9, it includes a provision for limiting the number of signatories and utilizing e-signature or digital signatures. Also, it also provides for electronic version of licenses and permits to have the same authority as the physical or hard copies. On the other hand, Section 11 requires cities and municipalities to automate their business permitting and licensing system for their business one-stop shops to come up with what we now call electronic business one-stop shops or EBOS. They were given 3 years from the effectivity of the law to create their own EBOS, electronic business one-stop shop. So it ended last June 17, 2021. So right now in our list, there are about 902 local government units who are already in the process of finishing their automation with the help of the DICT's electronic software. Next slide, please. To continue on the provisions on automation of the Anti-Red Tape Act or the ARTA law or the EODB law, Section 13 established or directs the establishment or creation of the Central Business Portal. It also mandated the DICT to be the primarily responsible agency for the establishment, operation, and the maintaining of the Central Business Portal. Now, the Central Business Portal is a great project by the government. This, in essence, would sort of be the central gateway of all business-related permits and licenses from the national, local governments, even to the barangays. As long as it is business-related, then they have to be connected with the Central Business Portal. So, You could check it out. We've already launched it in its first phase. Another provision in Section 14, which is for the Philippine Business Data Bank. Developments are now on its way by the ICT. This would also provide access to data and information of registered business entities to the concerned NGAs and LGUs for the purpose of verifying the validity, existence, and other relevant information pertaining to business entities. This would also be linked with the central business portal. So your data being stored by the Philippine Business Data Bank would already be readily available for your other applications when needed. Now, lastly, Section 17 provides for the creation of the Philippine Business Regulations Information System, or PIBRIS, that ARTA has initially launched and would be formally be populating and launching by the end of this year. So this is quite exciting because the Philippine Business Regulations Information System would contain all of the business-related regulations that a person would need, concerning their transactions or concerning their industry. Next slide, please. Now, our automation efforts are divided into categories: our external and internal. The streamlining permitting process for telcos is one of our external efforts. It effectively reduced from what used to be 246 days of processing of permits for the building of telco towers to now only 16 days. Because of this, it increased the number of permits issued on a yearly basis. As we are all aware that the more telecommunications towers that we are able to construct, the faster the connection becomes. So faster connections would also make it easier to use online and automated services. Some of these include the Electronic Business One-Stop Shop, or the EBOS, which I did mention is a platform that ensures an end-to-end business registration for those who want to start their own business in the local government units. The creation of the Central Business Portal, and also we also have the Philippine National Key Public Key Infrastructure, or the PNPKI, or the official digital signature tool of the country being pushed by the ICT. Now, the Commission on Audit also has confirmed that electronic signatures and digital signatures can be used as long as they do comply with the requirements of the Republic Act 8797 or the E-Commerce Act, as well as the relevant rules and regulations that are being issued by the DICT. Next slide, please. I will just be brief with this one. The PIBRIS and the Artemis are some of the internal IT solutions that ARTA is providing. Also, the other platforms that we now have, such as the ARTA dashboard and the Citizen Service app. Next slide, please. Also, we have been advocating for online payments. We believe that digital payments and digital signatures are critical in order to close the loop of digitalization in any services. A partially automated and a partially manual service or process would still be considered as manual, since you still have to go out of the platform and then perform your requirements offline. So that would even be more taxing for our people. But ARTA issued certain memorandum circular, again, MC 2020-06, which pushed for digital payments, and government agencies are being required to set up their payment gateway for all permits, licenses, and other fees. We are also helping Land Bank to beef up and supporting them for their integration with the other private payment facilities. We are also in collaboration with DTI, DICT, DIALG, when we issued the Joint Memorandum Circular 2020-01, which now requires all government agencies to implement an online payment gateway for processing business permits. Now, we in ARTA do urge all LGUs who are using the IBPLS or the Integrated Business Permitting Licensing System to link themselves or to make use of the online facilities of the land bank. Since land bank is about maybe 90 or 95% of the LGUs are using land bank accounts, so it's very important for land bank to have an effective online system for payment. They do right now and they call it Link Biz Portal. So that is also one avenue that needs to continue to be developed and to be used. So advocating also for land bank is to be the primary bank for the government agencies for their development and strengthening of their security is really imperative. Next slide, please. All right. So quickly now, so there is now a need for us to have a more security conscious and security compliant government agencies when it comes to cyber security. These are just five of the things that needs to be done in order to embed cybersecurity consciousness and compliance in the government. First, it is that there should be a growing and an evolving government policies and procedures that would be in place, both on a national level and also a local level, as well as in an agency level. These policies has to be in place, continues to be needs to be in place, and I think at least we already have the backbone with the passage of the different laws, but it has to really cascade into policies and programs of works in the different government agencies. Next is the continuous training of government employees on information security and data management. This is now being done and being pushed, um, and we hope that this would continue in the coming months and years. And also the implementation of essential security tools that the government should now be using, and also through the help of the private sector to develop a very effective and very secure, cyber platform, having to use these essential security tools. Number four is that government agencies needs to be prepared for all eventualities or any attacks such as hacks, data breach, and others. Right now, there are stress tests or data security evaluation being done by the ICT in the different platforms that we are using. But which leads me to number five. But when it really goes down to it, we need to develop a new culture and a paradigm of cybersecurity awareness in our government agencies. You know, it's just one thing encouraging everyone to transition already to online platforms, but it's another to make them aware and have a culture and paradigm of cybersecurity awareness. So these are some of the things that we will continue to work on with the other government agencies. Next slide, please. Okay. So last year, ARTA conducted a data security training through our partner, um, Nexus Guard. They provided a free data security training on securing on Philippine government online applications. So this was done last August 25 to 26, 2020, and all of the IT officers of the different government agencies were in attendance, including participants from the Supreme Court and also um, the different constitutional bodies. Next slide, please. So to end, I just want to remind everyone that the train of reform against red tape is already on the move. On it are our hopes for an e-governance, cyber secured environment for our country. And we do hope that you would be our partners in this uh, initiatives that we are really having to really push government efficiency to the fore and to weed out red tape across our bureaucracy. We do believe that anyone who would choose to go against this train of reform that has started and has been gaining momentum will surely be ran over. Thank you very much, and congratulations to everyone.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is an aggressive believer in the transformative power of transparency. He is the longest continuously serving spokesperson of Commission on Elections since 2007. In that capacity, he has chosen to do more than just deliver COMELEC announcements and has actively articulated COMELEC's positions on various matters, as well as advocating other issues that affect the public's right of suffrage and democracy in general. He is concurrently the COMELEC Director for Education and Information, tasked with, among other things, designing and executing the Commission's voter education campaigns, strategizing public acceptance campaigns for the COMELEC's various projects, as well as managing public relations for the constitutional body. He also serves as the chair of COMELEC's Local Source Code Review Committee. Let us call on COMELEC salesperson James Jimenez.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to ISOG 2022. I'm James Jimenez, and I am the spokesperson of the Philippines Commission on Elections. I'm here to talk to you today about securing the automated election system. As you know, we will be having elections on May 9, 2022, using an automated election system that we rolled out initially in 2010. Since then, there have been several elections, all of which have been very successful, and we would like to show you how we were able to keep the automated election system integrity intact. There are four elements. The election system rests on four major pillars: the source code reviews, the system encryption that we employ, the overall design of the canvassing system, as well as the transparency server operations. Let's take them one by one. As far as the source code is concerned, there are in fact two source code reviews. You know that the source code is the written instructions of the automated election system, and by opening it up to review, we are able to reveal to the public exactly how the system works. We are also enjoying the added benefit of finding out that there are no hidden or malicious codes in our system. So again, as I said earlier, there are two source code reviews. The first is the international certification by an international certification entity. This is carried out in this year. This is carried out in the United States. Then we do have the local source code review. The local source code review allows local interested parties to take a crack at reviewing the source code of the AES. Again, this ensures that the AES is free from malicious code, and it allows interested parties to verify the integrity of the automated election system. The second pillar of security for our automated election system is encryption. You can see from the diagram here that in the first instance, the data packet which is released from the vote counting machine is encrypted before it even leaves the counting machine. It proceeds along an encrypted transmission channel. In 2019, the COMELEC arranged for a simulated man-in-the-middle attack. The local source code reviewers concluded then that if ever the data were to be subjected to such an attack, the data packet would not be compromised. And finally, the data packet is received by the consolidated canvassing system, which validates the transmission of the package that it comes from an authorized source. Incidentally, the encryption method used for the automated election system is AES 256, which has been described as being virtually unbreakable by brute force. Another quote about the AES 256 says that there has yet to be a single instance of AES 256 ever being hacked into, but that hasn't been for lack of trying. The third pillar of AES security, or automated election system security, is the system design. As you can see from the diagram, the VCM transmits precinct results to 3 different locations simultaneously. First, to the municipal canvassing station, second, to the central server, and third, to the transparency server. All of these transmissions are in near real time and almost simultaneous. At the same time, the machine itself prints out a paper receipt. This allows observers who are at the polling place on election day to actually review the data coming from the VCM to make sure that it is accurate. Once the data has been received by the municipal canvass, the results from various precincts are then canvassed, and the results are transmitted back to the central server, creating a repository of trusted data. The data then passes up from the municipal canvass to the provincial canvassing station, and all the way up to the national canvassing station, where the final results for the positions of senator and party list representative are finally proclaimed. The transparency server, on the other hand, if you remember, that was one of the first 3 recipients of the data from the vote counting machine. The transparency server in turn feeds to the news outlets that are hooked up to our transparency server. This allows the media to keep pace with the canvas, allowing them essentially to run their own unofficial tallies. The central server, on the other hand, becomes the central repository of all data, making the data easily accessible to whoever wants to check it under the proper circumstances, of course. The thing about this is that with 3 recipients of the data at the first instance, what you have is immediate redundancy. The information that is contained in one set of data, for example, sent to the municipal canvas, should check out against the data sent to the central server, just as that data should check out compared to the data received by the transparency server. If anyone tries to hack any of these results, they could not do so for all 3 recipients, making the system immediately tamper evident. And finally, the central server itself sends a copy of the data to a public website. This makes sure that the public is also able to keep track of the progress of the counting, essentially democratizing the counting process. And this is the third pillar that we believe makes our system very trustworthy, the system design. And finally, the fourth pillar of AES security is the transparency server. The transparency server, as I said earlier, allows the media to keep pace with the canvassing by streaming precinct results in near real time. This allows them to keep up their own count. Unofficial, true, but it's sourced from the COMELEC itself, making this data extremely trustworthy. The same data is posted on a public website to allow the public to similarly keep track of election results as they come in. This kind of transparency really democratizes the counting process and makes it available and accessible to everyone with a computer and an internet connection. All of these 4 pillars, the source code, the encryption, the system design, and the transparency server, and transparency in general, all collaborate to make the automated election system incredibly secure. It has been used since 2010. It was used again in 2013, 2016, and 2019. And despite hundreds of protests being filed, not a single one has successfully proven that the election results were inaccurate or otherwise fraudulent. Ladies and gentlemen, This is the security of the automated election system of the Philippines. It is the system that we will be deploying for the 2022 national and local elections as Filipinos throughout the country troop to the polling places to vote safe. Filipinos.
Thank you very much. I do hope that everyone learned a lot from our speakers today, Attorney Jeremiah Belica and Mr. James Jimenez. And of course, thank you very much for sending in your questions. Rest assured that we will try to answer as many questions today as time permits. But just in case we don't have ample time, we will be contacting you directly with a response from our resource speakers, or you may also check the chat box as we will post their answers in the trail at a later time. For now, let us have back Attorney Belica to answer some of your questions, of course, to be moderated by none other than Mr. Chito Jacinto, ISOG VP and 2021 Summit Chair.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning, USEC Carlos Kita. At this point in time, we'll have to be, a bit more open in terms of our, how would I put it, our, in terms of responding to the questions that are being asked. There's a few questions that were raised by our, what do you call this, by our participants, by our audience. And the first question I would like to raise comes from Ms. Rowena Acuña. And it's all about the 3-7-20 days mentioned by Secretary Belica regarding the responses or to problems. Can you please tell us, are customer complaints covered by this 3-7-20 days processing, or are these just numbers only true for government transactions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chito Jacinto. To respond to that question, Section 9B of Republic Act 1103 states that all applications or requests submitted shall be acted upon within the prescribed processing time, which is the 3, 7, and 20 rule. Now, on complaints, there are certain processes and procedures that complaints are also specified therein, and this should be answered within that prescribed time. That should be followed within that prescribed time, because to allow the complaint party to address that specific complaint. And if ever that complaint specifically elevates to the filing of an official case, the court or the quasi-judicial body will now act on the matter. If in case it matures to a administrative or civil or criminal cases. So you know the rule on the due process.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the concern already of the court or the quasi-judicial body. But for specific complaints, say for example, you complained of the slow process within that office or agency, you can immediately complain to that specific office. Or if they do not act, you inform us so that we can intervene and we can assist the complainant to fast track everything, unless it becomes a actual case.
Okay. Yusek, you mentioned something that if, for example, if these complaints have not been acted upon by the individual agencies concerned, I understand you also have a website, right, for ARTA.
Yes, we
are the
have.
contact details available there so that if there's anyone among our participants, for example, or anyone who's transacting business with any government agencies and they wish to acquire or to get your help, can they get in touch with you and can they obtain these contact details from the website?
Yes, we have. We have various media. We can be contact either through telephone, through our Facebook, through our email. We have also what we call complaints at arta.gov.ph.
Okay.
So you can take note. Anyway, I'll be chatting this on the chat box.
Okay, great.
The website is arta.gov.ph. You can communicate directly to us. In fact, most of our of the complaints coming to us are being addressed immediately. I'll cite an example. There was a complaint by a retired general. The retired general communicated directly through a letter. I think it's an email directly addressed to our secretary, Secretary Jeremiah Bellica. Immediately, he informed me on the same day. And on the same day, I contacted the retired general, including the complainant, and we set a meeting because the complaint is that the retirees of the Philippine National, more than 20,000 of them, was cut off. So effective July until August, they are not receiving their pension. So immediately we set a meeting with the Philippine National Police and the NAPOLCOM. The former Secretary of Justice, Aguirre, representing the NAPOLCOM, was there. The problem, when we met the following day, that's a Friday, is actually the execution of a memorandum of agreement between the PNP and the NAPOLCOM, because the payment now will come from the NAPOLCOM instead of the PNP. So immediately, right there and there, they committed to actually execute immediately the MOA the following day. Actually, it's the meeting was Thursday, and they signed the MOA on Friday. Imagine on the following week, retired General Van Luspo texted me thanking the secretary as well as the former Secretary Aguirre that all the delayed pension have been remitted already to the recipients, more than 20,000 of them. Imagine, that's how fast, because of the whole of government approach. In fact, we created several committees. We created an interagency task force for all uniformed personnel. This involves the Philippine Statistics Authority, the Coast Guard, the Bureau of Fire Protection, Bureau of Jail and Management Technology, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and the Philippine National Police. And we issued 2 joint memorandum circular to streamline the processes. That's how we address it.
Now that's very interesting. And I guess this is now being enjoyed. I mean, the shorter processes, the more efficient processes are now being enjoyed by our uniformed personnel, right?
Yes, precisely.
Great, great. Now, Yusek, let me move on to the next question. The next question was, well, raised by an anonymous attendee, is not named, but the question would be, what major or major impactful contribution did ARTA complete in order to help the Philippines fight against COVID-19? I guess he's more, he or she is very much concerned about the current situation with the pandemic. Was there anything that ARTA has contributed relative to the COVID-19 issues?
Of course, ARTA has been very much involved, but I would not want to credit ARTA alone for the result of what we have undertaken, because we normally collaborate with the different agencies. And in this case, we have been meeting for the past several months already. And in fact, almost every week with the Department of Health, the FDA, and several sectors from the different businesses, the pharmaceutical companies, and so forth. One specific example is the establishment of Green Lane. Green Lane that would facilitate or fast track the processing of permits for the production of COVID-19 vaccines. This is the those who wanted to apply for a fill and finish vaccination here in the Philippines when they would set up a manufacturing site here in the Philippines. That's one concern. Of course, we have also issued the joint memorandum circular on this, and we have facilitated the approval of the LTOs, the license to operate of many companies which have been pending for the past several years already at the FDA. Of course, eventually the FDA had been very cooperative. We have been meeting with them, and they immediately released these pending LTOs. And also we help in the the issuance of the necessary permits for new drugs to come in here in the Philippines, and it greatly helped our pharmaceutical companies, local in particular, and also the different agencies working together. So this is a joint effort, a whole of government approach being applied by the national government. So it's a holistic approach, not just one agency, but the cooperation of these concerned agencies.
Yes. Okay. There's another question I'd like to raise, and I guess this is more of a personal question. Can you please enlighten us on the role of ARTA in ensuring that cybersecurity is enabled by government agencies concerned upon implementation of automation of their services to the public? What has been the role of ARTA in this particular area?
Okay, thank you. Of course, with the automation also comes the use of ICT tools.
Yes.
When agencies and LGUs implement this, we want them to ensure that these are secure and reliable systems. These should be vetted so that they are compliant with cybersecurity and data privacy requirements. We have what we call the Freedom of Information Act. We also have the data privacy law. So everything should conform with these existing laws and the policies issued by the government. And we collaborate with the Department of Information and Communication Technology and other agencies involved in this. Also, we meet with the National Privacy Commission because they are the ones in charge when it comes to the implementation of the Privacy Act. But of course, it is also the concern of all the agencies and LGUs. So again, it's a collaborative approach when we do these things. And in fact, when in this time of the pandemic, the interagency task force meet on a regular basis. Sometimes in a week, we meet 2 to 3 times a week to discuss applications introduced by private companies. And this undergo a vetting process. This is being presented by the technical working group, and which ARTA is a member of. So ARTA is also a member of the Interagency Task Force of Emerging Infectious Diseases.
Okay. One final question, Yusek. Automation of service is expected to contribute towards combating red tape. That was stressed by Secretary Bellica in this talk. And particularly when we talk about the government service, this makes data sharing easier to enable government agencies to break the silos of government information sharing, as stated also by the good secretary. How does ARTA stress to the government agencies the need for balancing the efficiency of services as against securing the information being shared? Kasi when we talk about delivery of service, sometimes people see it, or at least the implementers see it, as being in what you call this, in conflict with security. Can you please give us an idea of how it's being addressed by ARTA?
Okay, thank you very much for that very good question. Actually, ARTA has been working with the PSA and the National Privacy Commission on promoting data sharing among government agencies. The intent is so that the documents already submitted with one agency do not need to be resubmitted when transacting with another agency. Actually, what is happening now is that an agency, like for example, a SEC, requires you to submit the document. When you apply to another agency or even an LGU, they again require you to submit the same documents. So it's very burdensome and costly for the consuming public. So we do not want this to happen. So we are meeting with them. This would actually make information more secure, since only the key personnel within agencies have access. No? Mas secure sa kaysa yung you require them to submit all this to 10 agencies. So proliferation of that documents already is happening when you do that.
Yes.
So by having only one requirement, say for example, if they submit to SEC, and considering that most agencies now have a memorandum of agreement with PSA, the SEC only has to do is to communicate electronically to PSA, require them to provide the necessary birth certificate, the marriage certificate of the directors, whoever that be. So very simple, very fast. We do that. No? Submitting multiple copies makes it even riskier. No? Pagka multiple to various agencies versus submitting only in one agency, and they are interlinked. No? So we are also looking at sharing the biometrics databases of agencies. Example of this are the existing now in the government is the PILSIS. I don't know if you're familiar with that. No?
Yes.
The
Yes.
NBI has been has several MOA with different agencies. The DFA. No? So that there isn't a need to keep requesting for a personal appearance or for repeat collection of biometrics. So once these are all integrated, the system within the agency, so e-governance is already there. No?
Yes.
So immediately at the flick of a finger, you can apply, and immediately all you have to do is to wait, and there it is. No. So that's how we do. Of course, these are done with consultation from the general public. A requirement for us to, before we issue a memorandum circular or a joint memorandum circular for implementation, is that we consult those who will be affected, including the public. We consult with the private sector, with the business sector who will be affected, and the other agencies. So there are requirements that we have to comply with, the publication and so forth. No? So that this is, and in fact, we have now what we call the regulatory impact assessment. We came up with a manual, and this would help significantly the general public, the consuming public, so that the costs will be reduced. The appropriate consequences of that policy or law will have to be evaluated properly before it is issued.
Yes. Okay.
So that's it.
Wow. That's more than a mouthful, Yusek Kita. Thank you very much. It's been a very wonderful conversation, and especially with the examples, the specific examples that you shared with us. Thank you once again. I will turn it over to our host, Wella.
Thank you very much as well, and thank you to everyone.
Thank you very much, Sir Chito. And of course, thank you very much. That was in fact Arta's Undersecretary, Deputy Director General for Administration, Finance, and Special Projects of Administration, retired Brigadier General Carlos Kita. It is also very important to note that his leadership and management skills encompass the areas of defense and security, public administration, public policy management, strategic planning, education, and training. He has 41 years of unwavering public service. He retired from active military service in November 2013 after 34 years of professional service to the country and, of course, the Filipino people. In June 2014, he opened up another chapter in his public service at the Basis Conversion and Development Authority, which is BCDA, and was the BCDA's Executive Vice President for Corporate Services until February of 2021. He holds a master's degree of public administration from Harvard Kennedy School of Government, Harvard University, Cambridge, Massachusetts in USA, and is a Mason Fellow in Public Policy and Management. So indeed, sir, it was truly an honor having you join us today. At this point, let us have a few minutes break as we proceed to our panel discussion.
As we live in an extraordinary time of accelerated change, there's a massive challenge filled with unparalleled opportunities fused with uncertainty. ISOG's purpose has now, more than ever, been significant. This 2021, a stronger cyber defense strategy is required to manage the onslaught of cyber threats and intrusion. We are at the era of constant re-engineering.
Launch. Full virtual. Copy. Secure.
As the guardians of cyberspace, let us be engaged, established, equipped, empowered. This October 8 to November 8, and join us in the longest cybersecurity campaign of the country. The longest cybersecurity campaign of the country is back this 2021. The great shift for this era needs Herculean efforts to pivot to the new enterprise reality. Together, let's secure the new cyber norm. As we live in an extraordinary time of accelerated change, there's a massive challenge filled with unparalleled opportunities fused with uncertainty. ISOG's purpose has now, more than ever, been significant. This 2021, a stronger cyber defense strategy is required to manage the onslaught of cyber threats and intrusion. We are at the era of constant re-engineering.
Launch. Full virtual. Copy. Secure.
As the guardians of cyberspace, let us be engaged, established, equipped, empowered. This October 8 to November 8, and join us in the longest cybersecurity campaign of the country. The longest cybersecurity campaign of the country is back this 2021. The great shift for this era needs Herculean efforts to pivot to the new enterprise reality. Together, let's secure the new cyber norm.
We're back. Now let us proceed with the panel discussion, Secure the New Cyber Norm of the Public Sector, to be moderated by ISOG Vice President and 2021 ISOG Summit Chair, Mr. Chito Jacinto. Together also, let us welcome our esteemed panelists, beginning with, from Extra Hop Nexus, Mr. Edmund Ray O. Milanes, Head of Nexus Orion Managed Services. Next we have from Everest IMS, Mr. Manoleo Antonio, Product Manager. From Infoblox, Mr. Hon Kit Chan, Product Sales Specialist, APJ. And last but not least, let us all welcome from IPV Network, Mr. Patrick Geronimo, Director of Technology.
Thank you very much for giving us a chance to discuss the public sector security requirements. Our panelists, thank you for joining us here today. This will make a lot of difference for us to understand better where we're heading and what's happening and what should be happening as well, insofar as the public sector is concerned. Okay, I'll start it off immediately. I'd like to ask a particular question, something that's been asked by one of our participants relative to the preparation for the elections of the Philippines right now. It's not going to be specific to the Philippines per se, but more like we know that there are different types of approaches in terms of managing and securing our votes at this point. What would be the advantage, okay, of adopting the blockchain technology for automated election system? Can somebody start it off? Maybe Patrick, can you give us an idea of what it is at this point in time?
First and foremost, thank you for having me. This is really an honor to be attending this one. Well, yeah, we all know that the blockchain is really an improving technology out there since the coming of the internet. So we all know that also blockchain is a public ledger. No, it's one of for me, it can be considered one of the highest security fabric out there. You know, before you can entirely hack the system, you have to hack all the computers that are already connected with the blockchain. Now, the question is, in terms of the election, the automated election, the online election, we need to provide significant transfer in between entities or in between government agencies or in between voting centers, right? So I think the type of model of blockchain can be adopted in a sense that with the use of the current blockchain technology, you know, similar to how you can make sure that the information from one center that can be transferred to another, it's still the same. That's entirely the in a nutshell how I'm not an expert in blockchain, but that's how I see it. The integrity of one information, once you transfer it in a light speed changes, that should be credible enough, or make sure that it's still the same from one point to another. So that's my take in terms of the adaptability of the election for the blockchain technology.
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick. Edmund, can I call you Edmund? Is it Edmund
Yeah,
or
sure,
Ray,
Edmund.
or how do you want to be called? Edmund.
Edmund, Mr. Chito. Yeah.
Okay, Edmund's fine. Edmund, what about you? What's your take regarding the use of the possibility of the use of blockchain for the elections?
Okay, Mr. Chito, regarding that topic, no, blockchain is really a promising technology, and over the years, it had really transformed a lot of businesses, particularly in the financial sector. And I think it is not really impossible to adopt such technology on a terms of election systems, right? Although there is no solid study yet regarding this one, but the benefit of blockchain for this one is that I totally agree with what Patrick had said. No, one of the things that that are really important for us in terms of election is the integrity of the data that are having there, because we wanted to ensure that the one that came in as when we voted is the one that will be coming out on the result. So blockchain is a technology particularly known for high integrity and confidentiality of data. And having said that, leveraging that technology will ensure the confidence of people if we can adopt it on an election system. Not only that, but the information sharing that is crucial regarding elections when we are sending polls and results to the central servers, as discussed with Secretary Jimenez, can probably be improved using the blockchain technology. That's my take on that question.
Okay, thank you for your inputs, Edmund. Now let's go to Mr. Hongkit Chang. May I? How do you prefer to be called?
Just call me Honkit will do. Thanks.
Honkit. Honkit.
Yes.
Okay, Honkit. I know this is not your area. I mean, we're not in the Philippines. We're talking about the election in the Philippines, but I think this could be done also in all countries, anywhere there's going to be an election, and that's the reason why I'm asking this particular question. What's your take? How do you think? Do you think blockchain rather would be very? Would really support the security of any election process?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank you and everyone here for having me here. It is an honor and a pleasure on my part. I will speak from a perspective of security. So
Yes.
My previous two peers have already mentioned that the use of blockchain. I myself am not an expert in blockchain, but I do know a little about it. So my peers have already mentioned that blockchain by itself is secure, which it is because basically operates on the premise of peer-to-peer, right? I mean,
Right.
in the past, we used to have Napster, right? If you remember those days,
Yes.
where there's file sharing. So it's the same, right? You only trust from one peer to the other, and it's all linked. However, I would like to maybe raise a point. The blockchain itself is actually the platform, and the way the platform processes let's say, the transmission of votes. When you go to the voting machine, you key in your vote, it transmits the vote to maybe a counting, a server that does all the counting and sorting. However, the areas of access, let's say, for example, your voting machine, or you have a portal where you have administrators who wants to view results, are those secure? So that is not covered by blockchain. Blockchain is just basically the platform and the processing area. So the platforms, the systems right on top of the platforms will also need to be secure in that sense. So you need to have maybe your privilege access, your password controls, or in our case, for me, I come from Infoblox. So Infoblox phase, we tend to look a lot at the underlying protocols that is used, specifically DNS protocol, right? So DNS is basically used for any and all web domain traffic. So as long as you have a web domain, you have a web server, that's what you need to look at to maybe increase or have improved security. Yeah, so that's my view. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for those additional inputs, Hankit. The thing that I'm concerned with is, aside from that, which you have already covered, is the idea that even if there's blockchain, you're saying that there are some things that are happening outside of that blockchain process because of the underlying setup of the servers and all the endpoints as well.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right. Thank you. Now, let me move on to something more generic as far as questions are concerned. Nowadays, an enormous increase in cybersecurity threats have been observed. Okay. And of course, this also comes with increasing complexity. But how can we keep pace with these volumes of attacks, with these types of attacks that actually, as usually comes up with something new or a modification of previous attacks, etc. What's being done right now and what can we do to keep up with it? I'll start off with Edmund, please.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chito. Regarding that question, I would like to think that we have to address it not only as an organization, but rather as a community with this. If we're trying to keep up with the very fast-paced cyber attacks or the increase in the trend of cyber attacks, so it is really vital or crucial for us to help each other out, not only as an organization, but rather as a community. One of the example here is that when you are trying to create your security roadmap, it would take years, right? So you wanted to improve your technology, the people, the processes that you have. But it will be really challenging for smaller organizations, particularly to start off from scratch. So I think it is really crucial for them to find something like a community, probably like ISOG, who can help them or guide them in their journey on creating a more suitable culture and platforms or technology for their environment in order to address their underlying risk on their organization. Of course, each organization has different risks depending on your sector. So it is really important for us to probably affiliate ourselves on a sector similar to us, but not also undermining the probability of joining other communities that would help us out, particularly on information sharing, threat intelligence, and other stuff that will help us improve our general security practices. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Raymond and Edmund. Sorry. Thank you for that input.
So that's it from my end.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to move on once again to Honkit. Honkit, what can you say about this, the increase in cybersecurity, and how do we really keep up with them?
Okay, that's an interesting point, right? I mean, for me, I've been in cybersecurity for more than a decade, so I've seen a lot of things. So personally, for me, when we talk about complexity, a large part of it is I would divide into two areas. What are the attacks or the threats that we are facing? And the second thing is, what's the impact of each type of this threat? I think to put it more simply, if you're getting a lot of spam mails that floods your mailboxes with maybe advertisements, in terms of the volume, you might be getting a lot, but in terms of the risk impact, it's probably not much, right? Because it is more of a nuisance rather than a serious threat. However, on the flip side, if you are getting a ransomware attacks, right? So they may not be high volume, but they definitely do have a major impact, right? Either they can take down your data center and at the worst case, or they can exfiltrate data. So we need to look and balance with these two aspects. So one thing that we should also look at is commonalities. What are the commonalities between these various attacks? So my own opinion is that when you look at commonalities, let's say, for example, a lot of these attacks are using emails. So, and emails usually use phishing attacks. So I think it is good for an organization to start looking at ways to stop phishing attacks via email. Another, I would say, often overlooked area is that a lot of these attacks, ransomware, phishing, stealing data, and all this kind of stuff, they actually leverage on something called a DNS protocol, right? So basically, a DNS protocol is the way a web server communicates with another web server, right? You want to access a website, you have to use DNS. So they use the DNS protocol to pull data out and push data in as and when they like. To enhance security in your organization is to cover that up as well. Yeah, so these are just two examples. I mean, there are several others as well. I won't share for the sake of time. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on how we can deal with the increasing complexity and volume of cyber attacks.
Okay, thank you, Honkit. Patrick, your turn.
So much, Chita. Building from the information that my two peers already presented. So basically, it's considered a volumes of attack that we experience on a daily basis. Attackers are well knowledgeable on social engineering and information sharing. You know that us doing this event, we give out information for sharing, helping other entities to make sure that they're also aligned, especially if you're dealing your transactions business to business. No? They're also doing that. And we learned that they're also having this leaderboard wherein as much as attack that they can do, they will be on the top of that list. So the effect is we are constantly being attacked, right? So we need really all users to be educated on how to really deal with these cybersecurity attacks. This is not just those people who are actually belong to the operations, but it's really from top to bottom, right? Educate, because our attackers are also being educated and being presented with the advanced tools to continue on with the attack, right? We should consider the technology as an enabler, embracing the technology is no longer an option. And there are technologies out there that are really also continuing to provide complex and concise solutions. It's really an arms race for my personal opinion, Mr. Chito. Have the right partner, and it's really an arms race. It's not really a problem to become a paranoid corporate. It's always make sure that you have the right partner, you have the right technology, and the mindset and the culture should follow.
Yes, I agree. Thank you very much, Patrick. In fact, you mentioned about the idea that it's actually something that's actually ongoing. It's an attack that's happening, and I look at it more like a step forward in the Cold War, in cyberspace. Okay,
Correct.
but having said all those, in fact, Honkit mentioned something earlier about some of the points that needs to be taken into consideration. But I'd like to stress a question. I'd like to raise this particular question. So, what can you give us? Maybe 2 or 3 more most important points that that both ARTA and the COMELEC need to address when formulating their own cybersecurity strategy. Okay, so Honkit, can you start it off?
Okay, so I think my peer here has also mentioned that it actually starts with education, right?
Yes.
So the people who are accessing these machines, there's always a human being or two behind, needs to be educated as to what is proper cyber hygiene, right? You don't simply click on unknown links. You should have some sort of like help desk for them to report suspicious activities or emails. That's fine. For the solution point of view, I think for me, for any senior security officer, it is so important to sit together with their board or their committee to craft a cybersecurity plan or a strategic plan, over the next couple of years and roll it out accordingly. It was mentioned earlier that it's an arms race, which I agree. It's like playing chess, right? And the bad guys move first, right? Assuming the black is the bad guy.
Yes.
So we tend to be in defense. But the problem that we have, I would say all organizations have, is always time and resources. How much can you do within this time frame? How much can you commit in terms of manpower, money, and so on? So we need to do a balance. That's why the cybersecurity should not be done in isolation. It should be done with the top management or a committee that covers the whole organization. In this case, for COMELEC and also for ATA. So there are various ways we can look about that. I shared with you all earlier that one of the most widely exploited areas will be email, right? Using either social engineering or using some form of ways to come in. And if you look at attacks, they all have steps. They are multi-steps. They typically take like 5, 6, 7 steps. So you have solutions to detect and block for each step. Some solutions are more versatile. They can detect multiple steps. So I'll share with you one example. So if you are looking at maybe a step 2, where they get an innocent victim to click on a link, and the link actually connects back to a malicious website. Yeah. So the thing about that we need to understand is what this step will do, it will initiate the next step. They will try to contact this external server to download more instructions to do things. So it's like fighting a battle, right? You have soldiers who have made beachhead. They will relay back to the command and say, what do we do next? This is exactly how a breach occurs. Doesn't matter if it's a ransomware, doesn't matter if it's a typical malware, spam, or whatever. There's always this step that they have to follow. So if we break it down in that way, and add another layer of detail to that plan, then you can assess the plan and say, okay, for this step, this is what you need to do. For that step, what we need to do. So that's my suggestion for planning and laying out your cybersecurity operations and overall strategic plan.
Okay, thank you very much, Hankit. That's very well said. Now, I'd like to move on to Patrick. Patrick, can you tell me a little bit more about the same thing? I mean, it may be something new, but it may be something. But just what can we do, or what are the 3 things? What are 2 or 3 things that you think are the most important points, which both the COMELEC and ARTA need to address for them to formulate a cybersecurity plan in the first place? Actually, we never got the chance to ask them if they do have a cybersecurity plan. I hope they do. But what do you think would be the 2 or 3 most important points that needs to be incorporated into that plan to make it more effective in their respective functions?
All right, that's very clear. Thank you for that one, Mr. Chito. Well, I want to start with educate users. No? It's a cycle in terms of the education. We have to deal with the current people around us, and we have to educate also the future, right? So first, educate is there's an aspect of providing learning to our users, no, on how to deal with phishing. Example is phishing or smishing. You receive a text disguised as a bank, all those types of phishing attacks, right? So if you educate your people, it should translate to an action. What I'm trying to point out is, after you educate our users, specifically for COMELEC and ARTA, right? We need to have an activity wherein we will target those people who are involved in COMELEC transactions, who are probably involved in the development of ARTA systems, wherein we will target them to send some phishing emails and see if they're going to click or not. This will translate the assessment of the people who are actually operating the system, who are actually also behind the system. And if we identify those gaps, then we will continue to improve. Again, at the end of the day, we're going to work with technology, but as Hankit mentioned, there are humans behind those systems. So we have to strengthen those people who are actually operating and providing or triggering a transaction between COMELEC, between other entities of the government. And I've seen some slides earlier that there will be some integration also with the business sector. So the attack surface is growing, right? So first is, I have to recap, one is educate the users, but it should translate on really an action, right? The second one I need to point out is the increase of digital footprints, or I heard from the previous slide that there will be some online systems that will be commissioned. Chito, this will increase also the digital footprints. And we all know that increasing a digital footprints will actually increase the attack surface. And that increase in attack surface is going to be a playground for attackers. So adapting the second one is adapting a zero trust. Any entities or any devices or any people that will be connecting to those systems that will be commissioned by COMELEC, ARTA, or any other agencies should adopt a zero trust. Meaning, it doesn't matter if you're an employee of COMELEC, as long as we really know that you are really the employee of COMELEC, then that's the time that we can allow you to access. Adopting a zero trust strengthens the security by both preventing external access and limiting the lateral movement once really a quote and unquote intruder is inside. No, so I really before I can finish my point of view here, as a new way of thinking about your IT environment, zero trust centers or infrastructure around that concept, that no user, no device or connection is trusted. So just to recap, one is educate, that should translate on the action, and the second one is adaptability of the zero trust. That's all for me.
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick. That's well noted. Edmund, what about your point? What about from your end? What do you think are the 2 or 3 important aspects or important points that need to be considered or addressed by both COMELEC and ARTA in terms of coming up with their own security strategies?
Thank you, Mr. Chito, for the question. No, actually, there's a lot, but coming at the top of my head, on the best or most practical things that we need to do when we're trying to come up with a good cybersecurity strategy or program. Number one is we need to, of course, to have the executive support, right, of the organization. And since they're on the government, I think they really need to address it, the same thing, not only as an organization, but as the entire government. There should be a sort of an alignment between not only from ARTA, COMELEC, but other government as well, on what would be the standards, what will be the minimum sets of controls that we need to. And I wanted to highlight one of the common pitfalls when you are trying to create your security program. Normally, some organizations focus too much on technology. They tend to buy too much technology. I wanted to buy the best firewall, the best EDR, the best SIEM, the best security analytics, what have not, right? But the main challenge with that one is that we're just creating a fog more. So there are a lot of technologies, but we have to always start on a proper risk assessment. We need to understand what is the applicable controls on our organization. That is really critical when we are trying to formulate our own security roadmap and strategy. And the thing that are commonly missed is actually the people element. Who would operate that? We do know that gone are the days that protective controls will be enough to prevent the hackers or the adversaries from entering our organization. We really need to train our people, as mentioned by Honkit and Patrick. It's really crucial for us to educate our people. And that's my second point. Actually, create a good culture of security awareness. And when we create security awareness, there are several layers of security awareness. The first one is for common people or common end user that we have. They should be able to identify a common phishing from that, a good email from that. They should be able to properly report incidents at the very least on their help desk or information security group. Because without that knowledge, they're actually increasing the impact once they are infiltrated by an adversary. Because from a perspective of providers, seeing a lot of organizations thrive on their own security operations, we know that it's not a matter of what and how, but it's actually when. Even if we have the best class of controls out there, it remains the fact that the last level of control that we have is actually the people. It's not really the response platform that we have or the numbers of technologies that we have. But at the end of the day, advanced attacks are actually operated by advanced adversaries. There are always people behind those attacks. It's not just a commoditized malware that we're really afraid of. It's actually the one being driven and operated actively by such attackers. And therefore, we really need to have someone really educated, not only on the end user level, and that's bring us to the next level, which is our information security group. We need to have them trained in terms of incident response, forensics, and some level particularly of threat intelligence. They may not need to know how to do a malware reverse engineering or have a full understanding of memory forensics, but rather they need to have a certain level of understanding in order to at least mitigate or contain the threat. And then after that, the last point that I always wanted to highlight is actually to seek help from your peers. Do not let yourself address it. So, for example, if something happens to Comelec, they don't really need to address it by themselves. There are other authorities that can help them. In similar way, on other enterprises, there are other peers, particularly in same sector, that can help them thwart of those attacks from their experiences through information sharing or threat intelligence sharing. Okay.
Okay.
So
thank you very much, Edmund. But see, I just want to say something. I realized because of what you said that there is a need for for the COMELEC to actually and all government agencies for that matter to seek help when they encounter any problems, because that's the only way for us to actually prevent this from repeating itself in the assumption that the breach has actually already occurred and it's already had its consequences. We still need the help of others in the industry. I remember that there was mention that Mr. James Jimenez, our speaker for today for the COMELEC, actually is the head of the software review committee of COMELEC for the solution that they'll be using for the election. I think this is where they started off because they've invited a lot of people. But having said that, what else can you add to that? You were about to say something before I interrupted. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. I actually like how Mr. Jimenez presented the different security controls and processes that they have in securing elections, right? There is really a lot in terms of confidentiality and integrity. For example, there's source code review that definitely addresses the questions on integrity of the data. The encryption will really protect, on the other hand, the transmission of data, protecting the anonymity and the confidentiality of the voters' information. But I think one of the areas that Mr. Jimenez and the COMELEC really need to highlight as well is the resiliency of the system. They highlighted the availability in such a way that data are available on the central server and the local precincts, right? But they did not probably highlighted as of the moment how they are going to thwart, for example, a denial of service attack, because that has been some issues on other countries, right? So even if you have a resilient storage of data, it is still it will still be going to be a huge problem if someone launched a DDoS attack probably on the day of election on some areas or regions in the country, right? Yes. Although we do know that following a proper business continuity plan, there may be a manual process, but of course, when you do a manual process, since we're trying to automate, securely automate on this one, there will be another question of integrity when you do manual thing, because manual processes are sometimes prone to human errors, or at the same time, knowing the culture here in the Philippines or the history of the Philippines, there may be a problem on probably it increases the surface for bad things happening, right? So I guess they need to help people understand that the automated election system can also withstand such attacks from denial of service perspective.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Edmund. I'll go back to Mr. Honkit. What do you think would be an issue as insofar as an election process is concerned, as touched upon by Edmund earlier, wherein I mean, at this point there are actions being taken, but what should we be doing, or what should our COMELEC be doing right now for us to be able to ensure the security of the process, so to speak?
Okay, good point on that. So I think Edmund mentioned a specific example of a denial of service attack, which is true because you could have somebody who wants to sabotage. But when we put one step back and we look at the entire election ecosystem, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe COMELEC is embarking on this, I would say, electronic voting system for the first time. Is that correct?
What do you mean with that statement? Can you please rephrase it again?
Yeah, so I understand that this election, which will happen next year,
Yes.
it's going to be held on running on the blockchain platform, and it's going to be run through electronic voting booths and all that. Is that the first time that this sort of platform is being deployed and used?
Actually, the system per se has been in existence since 2010. The
Okay.
only question that we have is, if they do want to improve the security, they have been considering the use of blockchain, but we still have not received any, or at least I have not received any confirmation as to the veracity of that information. They were looking at it, but I'm not sure if they've actually pushed through and decided to really apply it to this coming election.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Now, as I mentioned prior, blockchain is the enabler of data flow and information, right? This is a ledger, or broadly speaking, it is a database where data is held in good faith between one peer to another. So in this case, between maybe the election voting machine and the destination where the votes will be counted. And to put it simply, yeah. However, you need to look at things like access, right? What is accessing these systems? What are the platforms and the web domains that are sitting on top of these systems? Are those secure as well, right? So this is where things like, for example, identity theft, right? A person who should not be looking at or maybe doing vote counting, but this person has hijacked another legitimate user and used his or her credentials to log in, right? So that is one, I would say, straightforward way of looking at it and how we can prevent it. Another way, and I would say a more subtle way, is that even if all the credentials, and I believe earlier it was either Edmund or Patrick who mentioned about zero trust. I believe it was Patrick. Even when you have all this in place, you have two-factor authentication, all that. There's always a risk that some data might be siphoned out of the system. So peer-to-peer is kind of protected by blockchain encryption and protocols. But when it comes to the interfaces that sits on top of this blockchain, like the portal that you use to access, if somebody managed to set up let's say another domain server outside of the network and start sending information pieces by pieces to this external domain, so that they can view the results, or worse, they can even tamper with it by sending an instruction back. That is something we need to protect. So the way I would see it is that there's 2 layers or 3 layers, right? First, the database itself has to be secure. I think there's no doubt that blockchain is a very secure technology, right? And there are already some nations mentioned, and I think Puerto Rico is one of them, that is really using it successfully. The second thing is also about accessibility. How do you regulate and monitor the access of the people and the devices that touches upon this system? That's where the zero trust concept comes in. You don't trust is temporary. Every time you log in or you access system, you have to establish trust. I fully agree with what Edmund has mentioned. Third, and a more subtle manner, and this is where I work with a lot of my own clients in InfoBlocks. It's how do we manage the underlying protocols, right? The DNS or the DHCP protocols that is usually used and commonly used by a lot of hackers to infiltrate and infiltrate instructions, exfiltrate data. So we have to look at it in a holistic manner. Yeah. So there's probably a few other areas I may not have covered, but if you sit down and work out a plan, you probably come up with several areas that you need to look at. Yeah.
Of course.
So to me, the more touch points that you secure, the better your security stance will be.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honkit.
Okay.
And finally, Patrick, could you share us with us your ideas, your thoughts on this same idea, same item?
Yeah. I hope that the blockchain technology is already available in the election system, but apparently the system architecture that was earlier showcased by our dear secretary, it's actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's still the same same system that was used on the earlier election, right? So basically, I would assume that the system has been code reviewed. I mean, we did a penetration testing on the APIs, specifically also on the voting machines. These are the things that has to be performed on any activities, even though if it's on the national level, of course, on the local government level, any system that you commission or you bring online, it has to be tested, continuously tested. Again, it's software runs at the back end of any hardware. So if you're talking about the election system, you're talking about this voting machines that will feed the information to a centralized database, and the news outlets are tapped into the central database or probably another server just to provide a more secured manner. Whenever you add entities that will actually connect, right? Connect to the election system, you're increasing the attack surface. So what I'm trying to point out here, all systems or all entry points should be tested, as mentioned by Honkit. Again, blockchain is good. Actually, it's better than any systems out there. But you have to take into consideration the application that will be built on top of the blockchain, and it has to be tested. So again, as mentioned, I'm not sure if we're going to embrace the blockchain in this election, but using the older system architecture, I think all points should be covered in terms of testing. And if you try to cipher some information out of the system, there has to be a control. Any transmittal in and out of the system should be monitored. So that's my key point.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And thank you very much, Honkit. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Edmund.
having us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
We've
you.
actually had a very good discussion, and I can go on and on with this, but we're limited by time. So once again, we really do appreciate you helping us out in this. And hopefully, I do believe that there are personnel of both ARTA and COMELEC who's listening to us right now. And I'm hoping that they have picked up a lot of things from our discussions. But there is one thing I will be adding before I end, and that is, at this point in time, everybody realizes, and I think you all, the three of you would also agree with me, that the most vulnerable aspect of our of any system that we have right now is the people aspect, the people portion, and this has to be addressed. And I am hoping that both ARTA and the COMELEC will actually take this into consideration and focus, as you mentioned earlier, on training their own people. Okay, because this is the most vulnerable area of any system from the point of view of people, process, and technology. So, having said all that, thank you very much. and I'll be turning you over. We're turning this over once again to our host, Wella.
Thank you very much, Sir Chito, and of course, thank you to all our esteemed panelists, namely Mr. Edmund Ray Milanes, Mr. Hon Kit Chang, and Mr. Patrick Geronimo. You know, that was indeed a very insightful sharing, and I do hope that all our attendees were able to take down notes, as again, there are just too many important details and tips to remember. And also would like to thank everybody who sent in their questions. If we are not able to answer your questions today, rest assured that we will try to answer them. Either we will send you the answers directly or we will post it at the chat box at a later time. So once again, thank you very much for attending. And now I'd like to thank everybody and congratulate our first 50 registrants. I believe our first 50 registrants will be receiving ISOG gift packs. So thank you very much. All right, and please do stand by again. Thank you very much for joining us in this session, and watch out and join us again for next week's webinar, where we will discuss leadership in cybersecurity, wherein we will engage, establish, equip, and empower our guardians of cyberspace. So together, let us secure the new cyber norm.
As we live in an extraordinary time of accelerated change, there's a challenge filled with unparalleled opportunities fused with uncertainty. ISOG's purpose has now, more than ever, been significant. This 2021, a stronger cyber defense strategy is required to manage the onslaught of cyber threats and intrusion. We are at the era of constant re-engineering.
Launch. Full virtual. Copy. Secure.
As the guardians of cyberspace, let us be engaged, established, equipped, empowered. This October 8 to November 8, and join us in the longest cybersecurity campaign of the country. The longest cybersecurity campaign of the country is back this 2021. The great shift for this era needs Herculean efforts to pivot to the new enterprise reality. Together, let's secure the new cyber norm.
So before I let all of you go, I'd like to invite all of you on November 4, 2021. That's another Thursday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. We will have another special webinar live. It's called The Great Shift, featuring Louis Sangalang. So and we'll also notify the first 50 registrants. We'll inform you of your prize and we'll send it to you ASAP. So once again, thank you very much for joining us, and I do hope to see you on November 4. Please mark your calendars. It's again Thursday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon. See you then.